In the course of their journey, he came to a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house.
Located 15 stadia from Jerusalem, about 3 kilometers, on the eastern slope of the Mount of Olives, Bethany represented the last stop for travelers climbing toward the city from Jericho. This site was the setting of 3 gospel episodes of great tenderness and strength. The conversation between Jesus and Martha, the resurrection of Lazarus, and the supper at the house of Simon the leper.
"Martha, Martha," he said, "you worry and fret about so many things, and yet few are needed. Indeed, only one. It is Mary who has chosen the better part, and it is not to be taken from her."
Martha, who is serving, is concerned about offering hospitality worthy of Jesus, while Mary sits at Jesus' feet listening. She is the perfect disciple. Here we see that Martha is truly a prisoner of the model of womanhood imposed by Eastern society. Women were made for serving. Jesus, by contrast, comes to liberate women and accepts that a woman may be a disciple. This was absolutely new to Judaism. Rabbis did not accept women among their disciples, but Jesus did. He permits Mary to listen to him. She is seated like the other disciples. Ancient Bethany corresponds to the present-day Arab village of Al-Azariah, from the Latin Lazarium, the name the Christians gave to the village which, starting from the 4th century, grew up around an underground cave identified by local tradition with the tomb of Lazarus, Jesus' friend, brought back to life 4 days after his death.
"I am the resurrection. Anyone who believes in me, even though that person dies, will live, and whoever lives and believes in me will never die."
The idea of resurrection was not yet widely admitted in the Old Testament. We have only 2 texts, one from the book of Daniel and one from the book of Maccabees, which accept resurrection of the body. And Jesus wanted to prepare his disciples to accept his own rising again from the dead. For this reason, shortly before his resurrection, he came here to call his friend back to life. From the end of the 4th century, Lazarus's tomb could be reached from the forecourt of a large Christian basilica with 3 aisles separated by rows of columns and splendid mosaic flooring. In the 6th century, a new church was built along the same axis, shifted slightly eastward. It preserved the structures of the earlier building, which was transformed into a vestibule. It remained in use for several centuries, and during the Middle Ages it was greatly reinforced and embellished with mosaics and painting. In the 12th century, at the initiative of Queen Millicent, the Crusaders built a new 3-aisled basilica over Lazarus's tomb, which was turned into a crypt. It was entrusted to the care of the adjacent abbey of Benedictine sisters, among whose members was Yvette, the Queen's sister. In the 15th century, the entire area was incorporated into a Muslim mosque, making the tomb difficult to reach for Christian pilgrims. Between 1566 and 1575, the custody of the Holy Land opened a new entrance to enable pilgrims to access the venerated tomb without passing through the mosque. Even today, 24 steps lead to a vestibule from which one may enter the mortuary chamber through a narrow opening in the floor, formerly closed off by a stone.
It was the same Mary, the sister of the sick man Lazarus, who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair.
Bethany is also the place where Simon lived, Simon the leper, who invited Jesus to supper. Jesus willingly accepted the invitation to supper at the home of the Pharisees. We are used to seeing the Pharisees only as Jesus' enemies, but Jesus had many friends also among the Pharisees and accepted the invitation. And during one such supper, a woman came with perfumed oil and anointed Jesus' feet. When they comment upon this passage, the Church Fathers say, the home is a church that must be filled with the perfume of Jesus. The present sanctuary was designed by the architect Baluzzi and built in 1954 by the Custody of the Holy Land. It is conceived as a mausoleum and partly incorporates the ruins of the former ancient basilicas brought to light by archaeological excavations. The suggestive combination of semi-darkness and the light flooding the dome makes the hope of resurrection and life delivered to us here by Jesus' words clear, radiant, and perceptible.